Welcome to the Momentom Collective podcast. Momentom Collective provides training spaces and community around the world for unconventional minds and nomads to co-create the future. This podcast shares ideas on how we can transcend and shift towards our highest self. On the 11th edition of the podcast, I sit down for a cup of cacao in San Marcos with Keith Wilson, also known as the Chocolate Shaman. Keith has been working with cacao as a medicine and plant spirit for decades and has grown an international following for his renowned cacao and weekly porch sessions that dive into sharing wisdom, ideas, and healing techniques. Get ready as we dive into such topics as what ceremonial cacao means, why play can transcend consciousness, and the ultimate gift humanity has for the earth. Join us.
All right.
Beautiful. John Early here with the Momentum Collective podcast, and very honored to be in the home of Keith Wilson, a leader here in San Marcos on Lake Atitlan in Guatemala. He's known very much for his cacao ceremonies and his amazing cacao, which we're fortunate to share a cup of today, along with some of his wisdom and his teachings that he's been sharing with many people over the years. So thank you, Keith, for joining us here today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's more fun.
Let's have some fun indeed. As we get into this cup of cacao, maybe we'll start with what does cacao mean to you? Why cacao?
Well, the basic story here is that I got to Guatemala 16 years ago, about 4 years after this town had a road and electricity, and realized I was home. Eventually bought a piece of property, and what I knew about chocolate before I got here was called Hershey's. And I had missed all of the early raw foods movement that got into chocolate and things like that, because I was way too busy in the mountains and caving and climbing and traveling around the world and stuff like that. Didn't pay any attention to it. So in meditation one day here on the porch, I had a visit from this plant energy. I used to work with plant spirit medicine and higher dimensional beings, and so it was obvious I was being contacted by a multidimensional being. And it took a little while to figure out that the being was chocolate or cacao, and that seemed a little strange. There's a multidimensional being called the spirit of cacao or chocolate, and okay, so what's up? And she invited me on an adventure, and about a week and a half later, I met a botanist on the boat taxi who had a project here in Guatemala in a little community on the other side of the volcanoes and up in the coastal rainforest mountains, about 45 minutes walk. And it was with Central America's #1 superfood, now called Maya nut. You can go to mayanutinstitute.org and learn all about it. And I went with her to visit the project. And on the walk-in and in the community, I saw a lot of cow growing that was drying in people's yards. So I asked if I could buy some from them, and they said no. But if you come back in a week, we'll have some made for you. So a week later, I did the 5-hour bus journey, walked up in the mountains, got my goodies, brought it back. The next morning, I had a cup of cacao, and an hour later, sat down with the Cacao Spirit, rang her up on the cosmic telephone, and said, I have one of this planet's most important medicine plants, teacher plants, facilitator plants, magic plants, running around in my system. And she, because it felt like she, is completely different than any other medicine plant I've ever had. And like a lot of people, I've been with the shamans from psychedelic using cultures. And this stuff was totally different. I wasn't on a trip. But the doors were open. And I had this immense access to wherever I wanted to go.
Right.
And so that led to a lot of web research intermixed with 3 years of southern Mexico to Panama, buying cacao in markets, visiting growers, visiting indigenous peoples, visiting chocolate factories, and studying, because the Cacao Spirit kept saying, look, you're going to have to be an international chocolate expert. You're going to have to know about commodities markets and fair trade and all that shit.
That's quite a message to come across from Plant Spirit.
And so I did, and I got up a website that basically was designed to share everything I learned, every question anybody ever asked me for like 13 or 14 years that wasn't in the website. I made a paragraph and stuck it somewhere. So it is a resource base for people who want to use this kind of cacao, which is different. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So they don't have to go through the learning curve that I went through. And why this stuff is different is that it has the compounds and energies that the ancient shamans used cacao for. Most cacao, 95% here, basically 100% in Africa and Indonesia, is a hybrid variety. The Spanish started crossbreeding Central and South American cacao about 400 years ago. It's more productive, makes bigger beans, and like any hybrid, the farmers prefer it. It sells for more in the market too, but it's got a lot of caffeine in it. And our cacao has very little caffeine.
Interesting.
And I call the caffeine too buzzy, no focus.
The jitter.
Yeah, you get the jitters. And there's cacao here in town that people don't even like to go dancing with. They don't even like it for ecstatic dance. It's such crank. And, well, fine. I think it might have a use in long-distance automotive driving. But,
interesting.
At any rate, I learned about cacao. I started doing ceremonies. We figured out how to use cacao in private sessions, ceremonies, and then it went into chocolate hiking. And from there, very rapidly, chocolate breathwork, chocolate yoga, chocolate ecstatic dance, chocolate kirtan, and chocolate sound healing. And they have just blown all over the world. There are people everywhere doing it. Then it went into the artistic and the creative world. I have musicians, artists, and writers that tell me that our chocolate church juice takes them to another level.
Chocolate church juice, I like that.
And we like that. We also call it Cacao.
Yeah, Cacao.
Even though ours isn't the speedy kind.
Well, it's definitely a heart opener.
Absolutely. That is what it's famous for.
Yeah.
And
particularly this kind or all cacao?
Particularly this kind. Because when you get a lot of the caffeine, you have less of the active compounds. In general, I mean, it's hugely variable. Every batch is different. And my big problem was to find consistency. And I ended up finding it by communicating with the Cacao Spirit. And she leads me to wherever we're getting it. And so that's a disadvantage because everybody wants that cute little story and they want to see pictures of the farm you get it from, and we don't.
Yeah.
We get it from where the Cacao Spirit leads me. But what I found out is that besides the energies and the compounds needed and a few simple things that most people would look at like organic and a few of the minor things like the labor it was produced under, that people were happy on the farm, it was processed correctly, fungicides weren't used in the growing, and all these little vibrational aspects that are impossible to know except by asking another level of reality.
Right.
What's going on with this beans? And right now, I have the last of a rather large order. And presently there's 35,000 pounds, that'd be, I don't know, 16, 17,000 kilos down there in the warehouse. And we hand peel it all and then take it through a second sort. Everybody else just grinds everything.
Outside of a Titlan? This is...
No, right here.
Right here in the Titlan?
Yeah. Cacao, in the pod, it's surrounded by a sweet, tart white pulp that little kids love to eat. Spit the seeds on the street. The seeds are bitter. Spit the chocolate on the street, basically. And you know how little kids like sour stuff. And this is at least in the more tropical areas of Guatemala, this is the kids' sour candy, is to get a pod.
Yeah, the custard inside.
And the thicker pulped varieties from South America, it's even a main licuado smoothie ingredient. So you can hit a roadside stand and get a cacao pulp smoothie, and you can get cacao pulp beer and wine. in a fermented, usually with pineapple and other sort of stuff. They call it chicha. You know, the
Chicha,
local,
yeah,
the local brew.
pineapple rind, and you sit it out for a while, and it ferments enough to get a little kick out.
Gives you about 3% alcohol.
Yeah.
Like a beer where beer is legal for teenagers.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Anyway, so we kept learning. And now we're watching cacao spread from the artistic world. I mean, I've had people say, your cacao gives me 3 times the brain power when I'm writing. We have coders say, I can know exactly what the line of code I'm writing is doing to every part of the software simultaneously when I have your cacao in the system. We've had productive workplace focus, people who have to produce in the workplace, and executive decision makers tell us everything goes to another level. And I, about 3 months ago, had somebody write me and say, your cacao has replaced every supplement that I used for energy and motivation before I went to the gym or went into a training program. And we sell it to a number of sports folks, generally sports with a great deal of creativity in it, like snowboarding or BMX, where the more creative you are, the more fun you are. So I don't know how you get creative about running around a track, but we don't know anybody that runs around a track that uses cacao either. But the upshot for your brain is that in 40 minutes or so, with this much of our cacao, you have 40% more blood flowing to your brain. Your blood vessels relax. Your blood pressure does not go up. Low blood pressure can go up. But that extra blood flow and energy and the other compounds, the bliss chemicals and the creativity chemicals that are in cacao are what provide the creativity focus. And we heard people saying in San Marcos, because San Marcos is it's cacao and yoga, cacao and workouts, cacao and jog to the next town, cacao
dance.
and training runner, cacao and dance, cacao and so it's been a lot of fun, but it's not my major interest. We ship it all over the world. We have a warehouse in Belgium, the United States, and Australia. You can go to keithscacao.com. My major interest is what out there is known as working with your shadow, processing your pain body, emotional release work. I'm a intuitive, processing intuitive. I use a 5th dimensional connection where I just know whatever I need to know the instant I need to know it. And so I'm basically a channel. And I'm in my groups. I was literally trained not to be the healer. I used to be a healer. I had workshops all over the East Coast. I knew half a dozen medical systems. I had a huge clientele. I got people off of dialysis machines and out of cancer wards, and you know the normal stuff that healers, alternative healers, have happen. And now I'm not the healer. I have a porch full of people. Boom. Who need to realize they are the healers. My teachers were real clear. The people you teach will go beyond you, and the people they teach, many of whom are now children, will go beyond them. And, give it a couple of decades or so, and that's how we'll do it on this planet. So one of the first things I learned from the Cacao Spirit is that she referred to herself as the food for the shift. And so I came to understand that I was working for the Cacao Spirit, getting cacao into the Western world, not into the indigenous world. They do it their own way. But getting the cacao into the Western world, working with Western people the way they need to be worked with. And by Western, I mean, basically non-indigenous. So we work with people from Asia, South America, and of course, the conventional first world, most of whom come here as traveling backpackers.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't get to see, like many of my friends do, many people less than 18
Mm-hmm.
because they're not out on the road
Right.
unless they come with their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh boy, do we have fun with them.
Mm-hmm.
They are basically astonishing wizards. And there's a huge number of them coming online.
Is that because of the shift that's happening in the
Yes.
world, or is that because as a young child you're not
they are
subjected
getting
to conventional
We
teachings?
were also illuminated beings when we came in, but we went through a rather serious shutdown process.
Right.
They are not only not going through that much shutdown, but there are some higher beings that actually refer to them as a new species. They're different. They came here to be different. And of course, a lot of them are having huge problems with that, dealing with that, and they end up on a lot of drugs, in a lot of trouble, cutting themselves on the satanic websites.
Is that from being oversensitive to energy?
Yes. They're hugely sensitive and made wrong for it, and they're not seen for who they are. They're
Or
judged
not
for
shown
who they
to
are.
embrace this openness to this
Yeah.
sensitivity?
Well, very few of them have someone as an example in their reality. And so a lot of my students who are now out there, students as an example, MDs and PhD psychologists who come here, have one ceremony. One of them flew back to Europe, signed out of running a 58 million euro medical project, came back here to study, let her medical doctor, best medical school in Europe, 3 science degrees, let it all go. Dropped being an MD. She can no longer legally be an MD. She didn't keep up her certification. And she's now doing the inner work with kids. And they're amazing. They're dropping out of schools, going to super alternative schools, going to online schools. Their parents are freaking out. And they're tossing balls of energy around.
It's powerful.
And people are having spontaneous healings, like here on the porch, like anybody who's working at this level these days. And there's people all over doing that.
Yeah.
So basically, I teach healing of the new world and how to get out of your own way so that that part of you that is already there. Nobody learns things from me. They open up what's already there.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot different from what you do. You let something emerge from somebody, a talent, a gift, a way to move that is already inside. And it just has to be seen and validated, encouraged, and then, obviously, practiced.
Yeah. Setting the creative container so that things can flow naturally
and
be created.
So that kind of teaching is, for me now, the norm. We generally start off with a few facts about where we're headed on this planet. You know, the economic reset, all this kind of stuff. The major environmental meltdowns that are well underway. A few things like that. But mostly it's, all right, what drama are you in with your sweetheart? Or your parents?
Yeah.
And where does that come from? Let's do some inner child work. Let's find out what belief system you have that isn't yours, that you bought in society's tienda. Let's find out what that is so you can let it go and make room for you, whoever you are. And so we don't have a philosophy. And we get people coming in here that want to work with a specific teacher that they know in some other religion. You want to work with Jesus? Hey, I know Jesus. Get him in here.
Yeah.
Boom, here, away we go.
Yeah.
So
and the bridge is cacao for you.
Yeah, we don't care. We don't care. I began calling it a connection and partnership facilitator.
Yeah.
To whatever you want to connect and partner to. On the website it says, chocolate brings the door, but doesn't push you through it.
Right.
You'll be presented with what you're ready to work on, according to your own higher knowing, higher self. But if you don't want to go there, you won't be pushed.
Right.
You'll be able to back off, without being shamed, blamed, or even, if you don't want to know, even being made aware of what you're backing off from, and absolutely allowed to do that.
Right. I mean, it always comes down to self-work, but the word work is never really well, if someone makes you do self-work, it's not going to be very efficient. You have to do it yourself. So
we try and transition as much as possible into self-play.
Right. Yeah, self-play. There we go. Better word than work.
Yeah. And because, of course, my work is my play.
Right.
And even though the being the head of an international business with lawyers and tax accountants and website developers,
all the
and
fun stuff
out the friggin' wazoo, it's truly insane.
Yeah.
But hopefully by within a few months we'll have finished with most of that.
Amazing.
And it'll be behind. Well, the problem was we got so big here we couldn't continue to hide as a non-existent business.
Right.
You get in trouble for that anywhere.
Right.
You got to pay your taxes, and we do.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're getting the cacao and your words out there, and that's what we're wanting to do here with the podcast as well, is continue to spread the word and your wisdom. And I've sat in on quite a few of your ceremonies, and I really do appreciate the power of, not forcing anyone to, chew on any of your ideas, or even the whole concept of self-healing and holding space so that someone can do the work for them. Like the body knows how to heal itself.
Yes.
You just have to give it the chance to
show it the
tune
door.
in and show it the door. And I know you have a few exercises that you work on with, and I forget exactly how you phrased it, but instead of most doctors, they always have to do something to you, and you like to have something.
Yeah, in my line of work, it's called fixing.
Right.
It's making your symptoms wrong, getting rid of them, and when your symptoms are gone, you're healed.
Right.
And higher beings refer to that as insanity, because your symptoms, whether they are worry, whether they are true medical symptoms, whether they are dramas in your love life or your bank account, symptoms are messages from your higher self. And if even in yoga, if you find a tight place or a restricted movement place and you stretch it out, you're telling your higher self to shut up. I don't want to listen to you. Whereas if you do something different, if you get in an asana that makes you aware of the tightness, as a little bit of pain, as a little bit of restriction, however that would manifest, and then follow it deeper, level by level down, to literally decode what is my higher self trying to tell me in the metaphors, the symbols, the images, the tight place in the body, the drama in one of your relationships, the chaos with a business partner. What is higher self trying to lead you to? Because whatever it is, it's going to affect all kinds of different areas of your life. From your relationship to your parents, to your intimate partner, to friends, to your landlord, to business partners, to people who provide services to your business, to teachers. When you start to work with higher dimensional beings, you play the same shit out with them. And eventually you figure out, my repeat drama, that's the drama I have with Source, with my own oneness. That's why I don't want to connect. That's why I'm separate. It's the game I'm playing. And when you start to unravel that and connect, then it heals on all of those other levels. And you connect much more deeply with your partner. Your relationship with your parents changes overnight, literally. It's crazy.
What do you find are some of the most common sources of blockages people have from connecting with their higher self?
Well, for most people and most systems out there that do this work, it starts with inner child. How do you work with the shutdown? Because that little one can literally become a guide. It was
the
there.
Imagination and the
yes,
whole...
it was there when you unplugged, got rid of, buried, whatever the metaphor, your wonder, creativity, spontaneity, your magic, your connection to other levels of knowing. When you got rid of all of that so you could be normal, that's who was there. And so they know how you did it, and you had to do it. It was part of a larger plan. There's nobody at fault for it, so your parents aren't at fault. You ask them to shut you down. And so when you go and begin to unravel that, and literally you can have your inner child take you by the hand to where you unplugged, blocked, buried it, put it behind a wall, closed door, take you to the empty place where you pushed it into another dimension where it's been taken care of by other levels of your own being. And then you can bring it back.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of work that we help people who are interested in doing it. And absolutely, it's not for everyone.
That's beautiful to hear, because that's a lot of things that we do with Momentum Collective. We offer workshops where you can just have free movement and creation and art and music and these things to open up the imagination and the creativity and that inner child and these things so that you can step into that. That's interesting to hear that is one of the more common blockages for people, is like you said, saying that it's normal to avoid that.
Yes.
Or it's normal to...
You're taught.
You're an adult so you're not allowed to have an imagination or sit or move with your eyes closed. And
you're taught that it's not right to feel that pain.
Right.
Push it down. If you can't keep it down, you need an antidepressant. That's what they're for, is to push that stuff back down.
And that's a powerful lesson that I know you've saying, is that we often smother people when they're feeling bad or they're feeling sad.
Yes.
I don't know, your thing is to hold space for them so that they can embrace these emotions.
Yes.
Let them feel it and let them release it.
Yeah. I mean, my goodness, I got the conditioning in the 1950s. The grow up, be a man, don't feel.
Yeah. Move to the suburbs, get a car and a house and a family.
Yeah. And I learned, if my partner is crying, it's not right that she cry.
Right.
I need to soothe her, comfort her, disempower her, pull her out of her process, because she should not be feeling what she feels. And besides, I'm way too threatened to know what the fuck you do with a woman in tears, so she's got to stop so I can be more comfortable.
Right.
Now that's what I learned.
Right.
And I find most people learn that.
It's powerful conditioning.
Yes. And to get out of that, when somebody starts to cry, you immediately comfort them.
Right.
And
tell them it's okay.
Yeah, starting about maybe 6 years ago, there began to be a huge amount of stuff on the web, a lot of it from psychologists, on the difference between sympathy and empathy. And I highly recommend that for people. Brene Brown has a couple of marvelous little cartoons on things like that really help get the point across.
What are your definitions of the difference between sympathy and empathy?
I always remember, because I know someone it happened to, one of Brene Brown's examples of sympathy. So here's a parent with 2 kids. One of them gets A's in schools. The other one is having a lot of trouble. They don't get good grades. Maybe they get called in for teacher conferences and stuff. And sympathy is, yes, but look how good your daughter's doing. That kind of thing. Trivializing it. Let's just put it under the rug. And a lot of spiritual systems are like that. You want to know how to deal with, if you're considering a school, a spiritual system, a monastery, find out what they do with the people who have problems with their system. Because you'll find major Zen monasteries, if you have a problem come up, if you get reactive, you're out. They do not want to deal with people who have problems with their system. Find out what the teacher, the organization, whatever you're thinking about joining, does with people who have problems with their system.
Very interesting.
And that to me is is that cuts to the chase.
Yeah.
Because then you know who you're really dealing with.
Yeah. I'm curious then, because you've had a lot of students and people come to you for your ceremonies and your talks, which can last, 5-6 hours or longer.
Yeah.
Lately
they've been running about 7.
Yeah. How do you deal with people that aren't able to, that maybe don't resonate with some of the things that you say?
Love them up.
Love them up.
Yeah. When you get to a certain place in spirituality, you truly and compassionately let everyone have their own truth. You certainly don't have to like it. There's a lot of truths out there that are not my preference. But I can let other people have them because it's their journey. And when I had to learn this, my teacher, so I'm learning this not long after I was the perfect age to go to Vietnam in the United States. And I knew I wasn't going. So later, in the 80s, when I got connected to the bunch of multidimensional beings that did my first round of teaching, they said, do you know why you knew whatever you have to do, even if it's go to Canada, you weren't going to go to Nam? And I said, no. I was obviously clear. I wouldn't even go as a medical conscientious objector. There's no way I would go. I'd run to Canada if I had to. And they said, well, you have a very high sense of adventure. And so most of your lifetimes, like everyone else, as a male, you had 2 choices, farmer or warrior. And obviously my sense of adventure led me into being a warrior rather than being a farmer. And so I've had many lifetimes as a warrior, and I'm sick of it. I've watched myself walk a battlefield. My side won, corpses everywhere, everybody is looting the corpses, and I'm just crying, walking through all the dead bodies, not picking up all the, what you do after a battle. And I realize, that's why. I'm done with it. And why can't I have enough compassionate love to let someone else get finished with killing other people as a way to solve their problems? Because I did. Why couldn't I let them do the same thing I did? Get finished with it. However they need to get finished with it. And there's some fine print. And the fine print is that as the energies go up on this planet, we are separating into different probable Earths. Literally parallel realities, parallel timelines. Right now, we all have an agreement to live on the same planet with the fuckers. To give them, we're going to light up ourselves and give them the maximum opportunity to choose love over fear. The ones that decide not to, at a certain point, we won't have to be here anymore. The timelines will separate. This is really woo-woo. The timelines will separate, and we will find ourselves on a planet without people that need to destroy the environment, make toxic chemicals, or kill other people to solve the problems. Even people who no longer need to kill bacteria and viruses to heal themselves. Because if you do that inside, you're telling the universe that you want to live on a planet where we do the same thing to people. Oh, I have a problem? Kill them. Oh, I'm sick? Kill it. As within, so without, as above, so below. It's the same energy. And when you start to realize that and act on it, then the universe starts shoveling light into you. And you can't do anything but give it away. And you move from becoming a space holder to becoming a light emanator, a radiator. And you transmit. And there are lots of people who do that already. And you've been through a little process where we split up into twos and do that. And you become a channel for whatever the other person and their higher levels order through your channel. And you do it well. I've watched you.
Thank you.
You're an amazing healer.
Thank you.
It's all inside. And you basically see once in a while there's someone on the porch that is too resistant to feel it. But basically everybody has a, wow, that was amazing. And yeah, some people in the next couple of days, they take out their magic eraser and you know, that didn't really happen.
Right.
I'm not really a wizard.
Yeah.
I'm just I'm going to stay small and hide for a while longer. Okay, all right.
And so you're a firm believer that everyone has capabilities to heal other people and heal himself?
No.
No?
That's not everyone's path.
Right.
That is the path of most of the people who come through here.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the young people that end up as spiritual backpackers or people that would come to your collective or something is they don't fit with a suit and tie.
Right.
Or, they don't fit in that world. And so they come to things like this all over the world. You know, they go to India or Thailand or Peru or
these energy
here.
centers
Yes.
seem to be.
Yes. They gravitate to these kinds of places that are basically vortexes where the energy is ahead of most of the planet, unless it's another vortex. And they come here to have an acceleration of what they're interested in. And in the early 1970s, I used to hitchhike 5 hours to New York City from central Pennsylvania where I lived to go to free dance. Somebody would rent a dance studio that had nothing going on in the evening, and they would play records. That's all there were back then, was vinyl. And generally hire like a djembe player to give a little depth, a little liveness. And the entire dance studio would be just full of people doing whatever they would do.
Yeah. Pretty foreign concept back then, no?
It was. It was. There weren't very many, even in Manhattan, there weren't very many people.
Yeah.
And I had a really brushy place in Central Park with a sleeping bag under a bunch of leaves. And I go crawl in that afterwards and fund my journey by taking a wild herb from Pennsylvania to the newest of the brick oven pizza parlors. They were just hitting, oven, real wood-fired pizza was just hitting New York City then. And so I had this herb that's better than oregano. And I would take it in and give, go to the back door of the restaurant, like the bums do. and
instead of selling oregano as weed, you'd actually sell something as oregano.
Yeah. and I would talk to the head chef, and I would say, I'm going to give you a little bit of this with my pager number on it. Later my pager, but back then it didn't have. I'm going to give you a little bit of this to let you try it. It's better than oregano, wherever you would use oregano. And I'm going to let you try it. And then I'm going to come back and see if you want to buy some. I never had one say no.
There we go.
Because a chef likes to be on top of something absolutely fantastic and totally new.
There we go.
Yeah.
From light spirits in the fifth dimension to oregano in New York City in the 70s. I love it.
Yeah. I'm
curious how do you process and feel your downloads that you get from plant medicines or from cacao or from higher dimensional beings?
For me, it's mostly intuitive.
Right.
But basically, everyone has their own way to input. Whether it's visual, whether they hear the being speaking to them, whether their own caring subconscious mind is speaking to them with a voice coming from between their ears,
right,
as it does with many indigenous peoples. In our cultures, very, very few people will allow that because it's considered to be insanity.
Right.
But I've heard the voice.
Do you narrate it with your own voice, or do you, are you the one narrating and translating into?
If I'm doing that to other people, yes. Then I would be what's called a conscious channel. I get, as many people do, but not all, I get a download instantaneously. And then my brain and my vocabulary and, my understanding of grammar, just like I'm doing right now, translates it into an entire paragraph.
Right.
But the download comes in an instant. And poof, I know.
You have to process it
yes,
into English.
And then I have to turn it into a paragraph
Right.
that, makes sense.
Hmm.
And it's really no different than what we are doing right here. When you are speaking to me, you really don't know exactly how the sentence you're speaking will end.
Right.
But it does, and it is coherent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same way. And most higher beings say that right now, you and I are channeling our personalities.
Interesting, yeah.
And so we're all channels. And as you allow yourself to let go, you can actually work with other beings. Most people don't have that journey. Most people work with higher levels of their own being, or work with what's called the fifth dimension, or fourth density. They mean the same things. There's both terms out there. It's very confusing, but they mean the same thing. Where you just instantaneously know. You get any knowing or understanding instantly. Actually, you don't get it. It doesn't come to you. It's simply there.
Right.
Immediately when you need
It's the place of unlimited possibility.
Yes. Right out of oneness. Right out of a great big empty space that the Buddhists call the void. The Hindus call nothingness, or these days, no-thingness. And several contemporary teachers call the spacious present. When you fully live there, the shamans call it clarity. And the Zen Buddhists call it conditional enlightenment, sitting on top of the 100-foot pole. The view's incredible. You see and know everything. There's still you in the pole, so it's not full enlightenment, which
Right.
the shamans call power. But that, most people that I work with here got into trouble as children, telling the truth. Getting it right straight out of the fifth dimension, right straight out of literally their enlightenment, their realization, their own ascension, because that's how they came in.
Interesting.
Does that make sense?
How do you find...
And they told the truth, which lifted up the societal, the masks, the psychological masks of their parents, made their parents very uncomfortable, because it's like you're being stripped naked in public.
Weird talk, yeah.
Yeah, and they're right, but you have to. And all these little children learn that their direct knowing hurts other people, and so it gets shut down. And
for you, what are your accelerated ways to continue to tap into the fifth dimensional state, whether you call it
play,
endless creativity or
play,
flow? Yeah.
Play, follow my excitement, pursue whatever's interesting.
I've heard this from a lot of people, is just following the highest excitement, and that'll lead you to good places. Do you find that sometimes limits people because they end up always, their highest excitement might be, just sitting on the couch, or it might just be creating and painting instead of doing
if that
real
actually
work?
is excitement and not avoidance, that's what'll get you where you're going. And I had that as a child, and my mother hated it. She would say, "It's your latest kick. You never finish anything."
Right.
But Mom, it got me to the next thing. I don't need it anymore. And my teachers said things like, "Well, you could wash your paintbrushes so someone else could have fun with them, but basically put it away. It got you to the next step." And I use the analogy that if you go to walk anywhere and you go, oh, can I take my foot off that step? Am I done with it? It'll really interfere with you getting somewhere, won't it?
Yeah.
If you keep your foot on the step when you're truly finished with it, you'll never really be able to land on the next step, or you'll be on two places. And it slows down your movement. And, take it out, put it in the garbage, take it out the street. You're done with it.
Excitement, not avoidance. I like that.
Yes. And if you're doing it to avoid something, you can look at that. You're allowed to know if you want to. And if you don't want to know, when it's important enough, your higher self will kick your butt and you'll go there anyway. Because we're all going there. We made the agreement before we're born, and we don't have a choice. It's going to happen. So I'm I work with people who decide to use meditation, inner ways, all these things we've been talking about, as a way to open up and connect with who they are. On a porch, we say there's the hard bus, the easy bus, and the magic bus. Everyone learned the hard bus. It's drama. Drama, pain, struggle, suffering, chaos, violence, and insanity in your life. And if you don't do your inner work, as these things come up, if you keep pushing them down, Eckhart Tolle has been saying again and again for years, New York Times best-selling spiritual author, that if you don't do your work, if you don't allow these things to release, you will have increasing pain, chaos, violence, and insanity in your personal life. And over the next several years, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 especially, into 2024, there is going to be a lot of chaos on the planet. About 2 years from now, we're about the end of 2020, early 2021, more or less. Probabilities change all the time. The euro is going to completely crash, followed by the pound and the Aussie dollar. After that, they call it dominoes or contagion. After that, the yen will go down, and after that, the US dollar will go down. And there'll be a space. And we want to change a few things. And it basically won't happen until the average person's pension can buy them a couple of cups of coffee a month. You know, when their pension is worth that much, they're going to be activists. Yes? Kaboom! So that is the assistance we're going to get in this global reset, along at the same time with more and more people waking up. We are a third of the way into a 8 to 10 year period of massive waking up. So kind of like the second third is just starting now, the third will be on in 3 or 4 years. And most of the people I see on the porch are there because they've invited themselves to learn how to move nightmares out of other people, just like you are doing. As the energies go up, bigger and bigger things will move out of people. Now we move some childhood pain, we help the people feel really different, we pop loose a couple of belief systems that are, sitting on people, blocking their creativity or something like that. We remove a few chronic diseases. But in the future, that kind of thing is going to get easier and easier and easier. And more necessary as more and more people go into that resistance. So if that's the hard bus, the easy bus is the inner processing, the working with your shadow, the emotional release, the Matt Kahn's loving whatever arises, where you embrace whatever comes up and welcome it, find gratitude for it, and for the you that has taken that journey. And then there's the magic bus, and we put 2.5 years ago, so we put a video up on YouTube called The Art of Ascension, and that's on the magic bus. Basically, you got something up, you can, if you'll allow it, shift into a parallel universe, literally, at a quantum level, where you've finished all your work with that subject and it's fully integrated. And that's what really gets people dropping diseases instantaneously. Even ones they've been under medical treatment for decades for, gone. Dropping severely debilitating stuff. And there's a lot of people doing this now in various systems. But we came up with a really easy way to do it before we realized everybody else was doing it. And we had a video made.
I've heard you speak before about, the state of the planet, especially the environmental crisis and the global warming, these things, plastic in the oceans. And you were thinking it more as a good thing because that will help people wake up when they see the immediacy of this, not being swept under the rug anymore, because the rug, it's too full.
Yes.
Too much garbage, too much things happening.
Yes, the rug becomes blatant.
Yeah.
This can be difficult for some people, but the basic understanding from many higher dimensional channel beings is that we are not hurting Mother Earth. That belief system they refer to as arrogance. You think you are powerful enough to harm a multi-dimensional being that expresses physically as a planet? Au contraire. She is coming to our rescue to provide metaphors to help us wake up, to stop toxifying, environmentally destroying, and radiation nuking our planet. She's coming to our rescue. And if the current thing going on in the Pacific Ocean that almost no one knows about doesn't do the job, there'll be an even louder one. Well, once we hit major marine mammal extinctions in the Pacific, I think Greenpeace will wake up. It'll be a little while.
Right, like you're saying, as outside, so within, as within, so outside.
And
so you think that the things happening with the planet are the exact mimicking of what we've been doing to ourselves as a human species?
Yes. There are several teachers and higher beings that say all the pollution in the ocean is just a mirror. In other words, reality isn't out there. Out there is our consciousness. And metaphorically, our consciousness. Out there is inside our consciousness. And so out there is showing us this massive pollution in here. So cleaning up the ocean really isn't the answer. You clean up enough people, and there are higher beings that say the pollution in the ocean will vanish. It's a metaphor. It's a symbol. It isn't real. Or, when enough people are cleaned up, you shift to a parallel reality where it's not in the ocean. And the people who aren't cleaned up can continue to have it as a message that they need. Now, I understand this is pretty woo-woo. And for somebody to break into it right away is pretty hard.
You had said something that's really stuck with me, and it was one of the more powerful lessons from one of your ceremonies on your porch. And my question when this topic was brought up with the group was, what does the Earth have to benefit? What does this planet have to benefit from humans? Because a lot of times we feel that, we're this kind of a parasitic species where we're taking more than we give back, and we're kind
arrogance.
of, we are, we're toxifying the planet. We're creating these things.
The Earth is just exactly like the Momentom Collective. It's a place where people can do something that will not only change their lives, but change other people's lives. You're going to have a physical body, you need a planet, even if you only build a spaceship on it. You need a planet. You need food and atmosphere. That is support. We are the ones here who are going to create the new world, the dream of light, with a lot of help from other beings, and one of them is the Earth. So she is primarily support. And we do a meditation for people to experience this, where, now classically the root chakra is survival, tribal, instinctive, that kind of thing. But if you're part of a tribe, you belong to something. So if you imagine the root chakra, first chakra, as belonging, and you let the mother energy in and feel like you belong to something that a lot of people are going to call the divine plan, whatever that is. You belong to something, and Mother Earth is in the same plan. And we are all in a cooperative, co-creative partnership to do whatever you would say we're here to do. This wake-up, ascension, going home, enlightenment, realization, I don't know, whatever.
Got a delivery.
Ooh, thank you, sweetheart. Ooh, nice.
Cacao?
Wah wah.
There was another thing that you had said when we were discussing this, and was that there's something that we can possess that the earth needs from humans, and it's transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me was a very powerful notion that we do have a gift that we can contribute to the planet as a being, as a place, as an ecosystem.
What if she gets to go to another level as we do?
Yeah, that's a powerful thought.
Yeah. What if it is that cooperative?
Yeah,
Multi-level, of course.
it's that collaboration, that co-creation, that we're both in the same system to uplift and transcend.
What if it includes a lot of multidimensional beings, including extraterrestrials, who are also in the same plan?
Yeah. So you feel that humans have something specific that's different from other species, that's able to transcend and able to be conscious and use love to invite this shift in.
Yeah. There's, a lot of people think this is where we all got sent because we were too backward. But most higher beings say things like, this is the graduate school.
Right.
Only the really, really advanced beings could even get in here and get a body. You had to have a huge list of, some higher beings actually say, you had to have a huge list of credentials to get a body.
To be in this dimension, in this physical body. Yeah.
Yeah. They all call this the lifetime like none other, designed to be more fun and more adventure than any of us have ever had in any lifetime ever. Everybody says that.
It's an interesting notion. There was another thing that you talked about with the Greys, and this is, again, very woo-woo kind of concept. But even if you don't take it as reality, but if you take it as just an idea of that, well, maybe I'll let you explain it a bit further, but the whole concept of the Greys being advanced and future forms of humans coming back because they realized the benefit of nullifying emotions, was it?
Well, the general story about the Zeta Reticulans, or the Greys, the little gray aliens with the big oval slanty eyes.
Right.
The general idea is, literally in another parallel reality, they were once much like us.
Right.
And they determined the same thing that we all know here. Emotions are a big problem, and people kill each other and, get greedy, and then
it gets in the way of a lot of progress.
Gets in the way of a lot of things. So they genetically modified themselves to remove the ability to feel, and then continue to modify themselves to be in better harmony with being on spacecraft and out in the universe and things like that. And they develop the higher technologies where you can move instantaneously from one galaxy to another. The technology is very simple. The distances, you're there. There's no time travel. There's no, you go. Very simple explanations for that too. We just can't do it yet. But at a certain point, they realized that all levels of creation were going to the next level, including themselves. And to do that, they had to love, and they couldn't. So they needed genetic material from people who were once like them to breed back into themselves so they could recover the ability to feel, heal anything they needed to heal in the violence department, recover the ability of love, and if they didn't do that, their entire civilization would simply die out. So Earth is one of the principal planets where they made agreements with people to collect genetic material, and that's what the abductions and the things like that are about. The early abduction stuff was horrific. People would wake up on the ships having things poked into them with all these weird beings standing around them and absolutely freak out because they had no idea what fear was. It's gotten a little easier lately, and much of the breeding program has taken place, and according to many extraterrestrials, many of us have hybrid children, and we will be meeting them sometime more or less after 2033, when the young people who are now learning our languages and our cultures up on the ships come down to live amongst us, generally, slightly removed, to get the last bit of their education in our cultures so that they can step in to the technological, the medical, the exchange programs once full public contact happens, more or less 2040.
I mean, these are some powerful ideas. And whether people agree with it or not, I think coming back to the whole concept of the power of love and the power of us as humans to have the conscious ability to invite love into the world, I think is a powerful lesson and a powerful thing to not take for granted.
And obviously, if the genetics of people on planet Earth saved a rather sizable civilization, they are extremely grateful to this planet and want to, as we're ready to do so, invite us out into the universe. So,
do you believe that emotions get in the way of things for humans?
Of course.
Do you think it would be better if we could nullify these emotions, or do we need to embrace them further?
Embrace them. Yeah. They're part of a process that we're finishing with. So in a sense, it's part of a larger process of choosing to be on a planet that pulls itself further and further and further into density, lack, limitation, violence, and insanity than almost any other planet out there, for a reason. That Bashar, a lot of people's favorite E.T., really funny guy, has an analogy. He calls it the rubber band effect. Now, the further you pull a rubber band back, the faster and farther it's going to fly when you finally let it go. And so what we've done is to pull the rubber band way, way back. He says most civilizations out there in the galaxies absolutely know they are unconditionally loved and supported by Source. We've forgotten that. We don't know that here. Few enlightened people do. And the purpose is to pull ourselves to an extreme place in density so that when we finally let go, and my 2 cents worth is that we let go December 21st, 2012, and we are now beginning to accelerate.
So we've already let go. We're in the process
we've already let go. We're on the downhill, or it was uphill until 2012, and we're on the on the acceleration, and that within I don't know, a decade and a half, there will be a number of literally illuminated people in the congresses and the parliaments of the world, with the people that obviously voted for them to get them there. And obviously they're going to vote for things other than military budgets and things like that. And this will happen all over the world. Most, or a number of higher beings anyway, say, ETs say, that there will come a time in our lifetimes when the number one priority of every single country on this planet is to turn this planet back into a garden. In other words, to completely and totally restore the environment, the forests, everything. That will be the number one priority of everyone. Right now, environment's not priority. Healing people is the priority, because those people would vote for the environment. You follow me?
Right.
And it isn't going to happen except with people voting for it. And so first we've got to get rid of the powers that be, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, the swamp.
Yeah, get some more people drinking cacao.
Yeah, well,
as psychedelic as it might sometimes turn out to be.
Yes. Well, as the food for the shift, the Cacao Spirit told me that would play a part.
Yeah.
And we'd get to watch that. We'd have a ringside seat. And I didn't know that I would have be basically one of the biggest employers in this town and put more money into the local community than anybody else. I didn't know that would happen. But I started selling it at the door, and the amount I sold doubled every year. And doubled and then doubled and then doubled and then doubled, you know, and here we are now with thousands and thousands of pounds of beans. And half a dozen competitors here and about 8 or 10 other people out there using the name we started, Ceremonial Cacao. Some of it is, some of it isn't. But it's become really popular.
Yeah.
And most of the people out there came here and visited us and went from there.
Yeah.
So you can find videos. What is ceremonial cacao? They do not mention us. And we originated the name. Didn't bother to trademark it or anything like that. You know, I'm not into that.
Yeah.
Other people can use that. That's fine.
So how can people, if they can't find Keith's Cacao, how can people find ceremonial grade cacao, or what's your definition of that?
Right now, keithscacao.com is the place for ordering, and ceremonialcacao.blogspot.com is my old blog website,
Right.
where I share all kinds of stuff. The second page on the website is the best list on the web of the known benefits of this kind of cacao. And there's like 40 some on it.
Yeah.
40 some things on the list in 4 categories. The spiritual, the medical, where it has huge benefits. You take this stuff regularly, a minimum of 20 grams per day, but 30 would be better. That's a little, just a tad over an ounce per day. And in several months, even if you're over 60 or 70, in several months, all of the deposits are gone from your arteries. You no longer have high blood pressure. Your blood vessels are relaxed and open, so you no longer have strokes or aneurysms. And you can find this in medical journals. And that's what caused the huge rush of scientific study into cacao. They found indigenous Native American tribe that drank cacao every day, and they had 8% of the cancer. No, 8% of the heart attack, stroke, and cardiovascular problems, and 16% of the cancer, as a population matched for age, weight, and genetic, that was normal, just like everyone else, white or indigenous, that doesn't drink cacao every day. And that's when the explosion started that you now hear as doctors recommending that you eat dark chocolate.
Yeah.
But they don't tell you. It is in some scientific papers, but the doctors would never tell you that most dark chocolate doesn't have the goodies in it.
Right.
Because that company could, of course, sue them.
Right.
And they're not going to, they don't stick their neck out.
We started with cacao and we went into
Yeah.
fifth dimension, oregano, aliens, and back to cacao again. So
Yeah.
Got the full
is
circle of it.
fun stuff.
Yeah.
And I have very much enjoyed being employed by the Cacao Spirit and helping her. Many, many years ago, I'd been into this for a while. I already understood it. I'd spent a lot of time on the web. I was doing ceremonies. And I remember I sat down with the Cacao Spirit and I said, hey, what's the big picture? What's really going on here? And she did one of her things. All right, we'll take care of it. Week and a half later, I was reading an anthropological journal, a paper. And it quoted an ancient indigenous myth from Central and I think South America. And the myth says, when mankind gets out of harmony with the natural world, chocolate, cacao comes out of the rainforest to open people's hearts and reestablish the balance. Now that myth is 1,000 years old. And I went, oh, that's what I'm doing. I am helping cacao come out of the rainforest and move into the Western world in a way she couldn't move through indigenous ceremonies or that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Cacao Spirit asked me, because I already worked with Westerners and had been taught a technology to do that and was good at it. And so she said, want to play?
As long as you have the intention to put into
Yeah.
it and go through the doors that is presented.
Yeah.
We discussed a lot of concepts and ideas that were pretty out there today.
Sure did. I didn't think we'd get quite that far out, but you never know.
Perfect.
You
I
must
love it.
have an absolutely amazing audience.
What do you tell people that think it's ludicrous, some of the concepts discussed today, or whether it's about fifth dimension or extraterrestrials
Laugh.
or things?
Laugh. Yes, be very happy with, when I first started telling people about this spiritual facilitator called Chocolate,
Right.
everybody thought it was a friggin' joke. What?
Yeah.
I'm going to go to somebody who's going to feed me chocolate and call it spiritual? You gotta be kidding.
Yeah.
And one of those people has been off and on the porch for 8 years now. And so again, it's back to everyone has their own journey and their own truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm long past arguing with anyone because it's not on that level that they're going to learn anyway. The basic understanding is that belief is not going to do it. Belief on the rational mind level is not going to get you anywhere. It's knowing. And you only find knowing inside. And when you put someone on a rope, it doesn't matter what they believe. They have to find out how it works for them. Yes? There's no other way.
Yeah.
When you show them a way to move, they have to integrate it into their body where they're no longer 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a, They have to integrate it into their body, and then they know.
Right.
They also know if it's something that they want to do or whether this other move works better for them.
Right.
And you can't tell them.
Yeah.
But you can provide everything that they need, including the music and the dance floor. And they can find it. It can emerge from within.
Right.
And then they have knowing and not belief.
And I guess that comes through, like you're saying, through play.
Yes.
Through testing it out, embodying these different things and aspects so that you can feel it in your body with a knowing and a feeling rather than just the belief, like you're saying.
Playing with whatever you're excited to play with. Which we had someone a few weeks ago, and their true excitement was to go to the little tienda and buy a package of children's crayons and a pad of paper, because they hadn't traveled with anything besides it would have melted where they were, down lower elevation. It would have melted. And so their excitement was to come here and study art, study creativity. And I worked with some of the most creative people in New York City for years. And I'll give you an example. I worked with a ballet group. And the ballet group had the best chiropractors, the best massage therapists, the best, that if somebody wonked their foot, they had the best chiropractor to put the bones back into place. They had all that. But what they didn't have with someone is, hey, you're the prima ballerina. And right before every truly critical major importance or major audition, you have the same injury. What are you doing? They had no one who could address that, get to the bottom of it, so they didn't keep having that injury. You follow me? Once they had the injury, I was a good healer, but they had the best. But no one to help them uncover the belief system, the energetic, the vibrational, the emotional, the self-sabotage, whatever it was, issues under that. Mm-hmm. And I could take them on that journey, and we could uncover it and change it. Mm-hmm. Or at least reduce the severity of what they did. Mm-hmm. Get a very mild stretch, not even a strain, instead of a major injury that throws the entire group mm-hmm. into disaster shortly before a performance.
Right.
And so I had a lot of fun doing stuff like that.
I love it.
And my friends all thought I was completely friggin' nuts, because I was the edible and medicinal wild plant teacher. And we all went out on walks and we picked all kinds of stuff, and then we went somewhere and we ate it and brewed it and drank it, and even psychedelic plants in Pennsylvania, we'd find them. There are a few, mm-hmm. and I don't mean mushrooms. But I went from that to living half-time in Manhattan, and people thought I'd lost it. And I was having so much fun.
Well, we'll have to save some of the psychedelic talk and those other stories for the next podcast, but thank you so much for sitting in with us here today, and
You're
for the
welcome.
Beautiful, delicious cup of cacao. If anyone is traveling through San Marcos and Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, definitely recommend sitting on the porch just in behind us here. Wednesdays and Sundays at 12:30 is still the time?
That's when it is. It's been that way for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And even if you're not coming for the porch, as we call it, there is a page on my website, ceremonialcacao.blogspot.com, on visiting. Mm. And that will help you with getting here, because it's not exactly the easiest place to get here unless you're ordering a $100 private shuttle.
Yeah.
And so there's information on how to get here. It's generally about 3.5 to 4 hours from the airport.
Yeah.
And it is 50 airline miles as the crow flies. That would be 75 kilometers as the crow flies, but it takes 4 hours.
Yeah.
So
the best places are often hard to find.
Yeah.
And it's the journey that gets you there. And I guess to close it, there is a special energy here on Lake Atitlan. If
Yes.
there's anything that you'd like to touch on about what makes Lake Atitlan special and what makes it called to you to be your home.
Well, actually, my favorite way to explain it is to say the energies are higher and more accessible here. And I work with energies. That basically means I am a pig in mud, having a wonderful time.
Is that because of the volcanoes, the volcanic energy, the Mayan culture, and the history here? Or?
Well, I suppose that's part of it.
Right.
But there's a lot more Mayan elsewhere, and the energies are very high there too, but they're not quite like here. And this is one of the planet's major vortex: Sedona, Shasta, Kauai, the second island in the Hawaiian chain. Places like that are major energy centers. The Sacred Valley in Peru are basically what vortex means is that it's the same thing on the planet as the acupuncture point on your body. So where the acupuncturist would put the needles on your body is equivalent to a vortex center on the planet. And on average, I would say the energies here are 9 to 12 months, used to be 2 years, but 9 to 12 months ahead of the rest of the planet that is not also a vortex center. And so there is literally an acceleration here. And people come, and quite often the drama needle goes off the charts. So the Bombas talk to everyone. I don't know if they can hear that on the podcast.
The boof.
Yeah, the boom's going off. The thunder is in harmony with everything being said on the porch, because at that level, it's oneness, and the universe is giving you feedback on what's being said.
Yep.
And kaboom.
Yeah,
so, thank you all for coming to play.
Yeah. Come get accelerated with Keith on his porch, or just here in Lake Atitlan. So John Early here with the Momentom podcast, and thank you so much for tuning in and being open to all the ideas we discussed today.
And there are lots of other people here of all levels. This is the yoga capital of Central and South America. There's other teachers, there's other teaching organizations. There's a lot here, as well as the energies, as well as outrageously good food, clean air, a 50 square mile lake that is on National Geographic's list of the 10 most beautiful places in the world.
Sold. All right, everyone.
Advertisement.
Plug. All right. Thank you, Keith, and thank you, everyone. Take care.
You're welcome. Dream well. Keep yourself fine.